Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. And on behalf of my colleagues at the International Peace Institute and our partners at Oceans Beyond Piracy, and I want to extend a very warm welcome to all of you to this discussion this morning in preparation for the upcoming summit on supporting Pan-African Maritime Goals for 2050. That may sound a long ways away, but it's not that far away as you may think. A summit which will take place in Lomé, Togo on November 2 to 7, which is being convened by the government of Togo and the African Union. And I want to particularly welcome the Foreign Minister of Togo, Mr. Robert Dusay, whom I had the privilege of meeting a few months ago, together with Maureen Quinn, my colleague here, and to welcome Ambassador Tete Antonio, my good friend, the permanent representative of the African Union to the United Nations, both of whom will speak in just a moment. I also want to thank our organizing partner, Oceans Beyond Piracy, and its director, John Huggins. And before we go any further, I'd like to ask John to say a few words of welcome.
Thank you, Ambassador Hirsch, and welcome to everybody. And I also want to thank the International Peace Institute for helping us organize this important seminar at this point. My name is John Huggins. I'm the director of Oceans Beyond Piracy. And for those of you who are not familiar, we're a nonprofit, privately funded foundation in Denver, Colorado. And so far, we focused on piracy, as the name would imply, looking to bring together different stakeholders from industry, government, NGOs, and advocacy groups like us. And on that note, I want to welcome colleagues that have been attending the contact group on piracy off the coast of Somalia, which has been holding meetings across the street at the UN headquarters, as well as the EU mission over the last few days. You'll be glad to note that we're not going to revisit any of those issues that were discussed across the street. We'll start on a new plate today. So two ways we're looking to expand what we normally talk about in this group. First of all, expanding geographically. So instead of just looking at the Gulf of Aden, we're now looking at Africa-wide maritime issues, so Pan-African issues. The second lens is, instead of looking at the sea as a place where crime occurs and where there's threat, how do we turn that corner and starting to see the maritime domain as an opportunity? And I know for our part, 2 years ago, we set up a Shirako program. So over the last 2 years, our foundation has invested $2.1 million. We've worked on industries in Somalia such as fishing, sanitation, agriculture, and energy, specifically solar energy. We think we've created about 768 jobs in the last 2 years. We have two incredibly dedicated Somali Americans who have gone back to Somalia, one in Hargeisa, one in Garowe, to run these programs. So although it is challenging, it can be done. We can start investment and create jobs and start to create, address the root causes that we've all talked about. So I think that's what we want to focus on today, is opportunities. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Ambassador Hirsch. Thank you very much, sir.
Well, thank you. I'd like to also highlight that this meeting on the future of the oceans, the Atlantic and the Indian Oceans, which are on both sides of the continent of Africa, that this discussion takes place at a time when there's a major set of reviews underway at the United Nations. So as you all are aware, this is the 70th anniversary of the United Nations. And there'll be a huge event here in September. And there have been a whole series of reviews going on peace operations, a high-level panel on peace operations, a high-level panel on the Peace Building Commission, a high-level panel on women, peace, and security. So this discussion about the oceans and the future of African development is not taking place in a vacuum or just kind of unto itself. And so these discussions that John has just highlighted and the meetings you've had across the street and at your mission and in Lomé are part of really a broader discussion about strengthening African development. The Sustainable Development Goals will be adopted here in September, looking for the period 2015 to 2030. And you're looking to 2050, to 35 years. Again, that may seem a long time to all of you, but the Cold War only ended 25 years ago. So these things go very fast. I'm telling you that from my own perception. So, again, I think what's really been excellent about what the work that all of you have been doing is the emphasis on the positive potential for the oceans, for economic development, both for the countries that actually have maritime positions on the continent, but also for the interior, for the Sahel. And I think in one of our earlier discussions, we talked about that, linking the countries, the littoral countries with the Sahel and the countries that are in the interior. Because trade and commerce goes back and forth and is important, are important for all these countries and all these citizens. And the other thing I'd like to just say before I turn this over to the minister and Ambassador Antonio is that this also represents a new effort to bring the regional organizations in the African Union closer together with each other. So in this particular situation, with the leadership of Togo, we have ECAS, we have ECOWAS, and we have the African Union and the United Nations and the European Union. So we have, this is one of my big themes, is partnership. Very little can be done by one organization by itself or by one country by itself. So this is a new opportunity to really bring these partnerships to fruition. Mr. Minister Doucet will now discuss a little further the upcoming African Maritime Summit, and Ambassador Antonio will share with us some of his perspective and that of his colleagues at the African Union in Addis Ababa. And then, time permitting, we'll have a brief discussion, a Q&A, which I hope a number of you will take part in. So again, thank you all for being here, and let me turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, dear Hirsch. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, my country, Togo, is honored to take part in this meeting in collaboration with International Peace Institute and OBP Oceans Beyond Piracy. For us, this meeting is intended to support the objectives of the 2050 African Integrated Maritime Strategy for the seas and oceans. We say in Africa 2050 IAM strategy. I welcome the holding of this meeting, and I would like to express the deep gratitude of the Togolese government to both of NGO. Ladies and gentlemen, the subject that has brought us together in this place is of the utmost importance, especially for my country, Togo, because of the new outbreak of serious criminal acts that jeopardize the security at sea, and consequently that our countries, having regard to all kinds of illegal trafficking transiting through the sea. Because of the negative implications they generate on international navigation, on trade, on economic development, and of the stability of nations, the issue of maritime insecurity is one of the major current challenges of a global scale in our continent. Deeply concerned with this vital issue, the African Union, on the initiative of the President of Togo, the President Faure Gnassingbé, has decided to hold a special session of the extraordinary conference of the African Union on the theme Maritime Security and Development for Africa. I think it's good news.
Sorry.
The extraordinary summit it will be in Lomé. Lomé is the capital of Togo. Lomé is a small country between Ghana, Benin, and Burkina Faso in the north. We are, I think, for your information, we are 7 million people in Togo. It's very nice country. Don't worry, you can come to visit us. The summit will be in Togo from the 2nd to 7th of November 2015, this year, in 5 months. On this occasion, important thematic issues grouped under 2 headings will be examined, and which are as follows. The first thematic is regional and international cooperation for maritime security. The second thematic will be maritime security and development. About the first thematic, we will discuss about 3 things. Firstly, maritime piracy. Secondly, the illegal fishing. Third, illicit trafficking of all kinds passing through the sea. In the second thematic, we will discuss about 2 things, particularly the preservation of the marine environment and the sea. We like to present the sea because during the summer we will discuss only about the issue of the sea in Africa. We think in Africa or in another continent, the sea is not give us only the negative things. We want to discuss, we want to present the sea like a positive things. We like to say the sea, we like to present the sea like a development for our continent, because a sea is not only a bad things. The meeting schedule is, like I told you, to a 2nd to 3rd is the ambassador or expert meeting. 4th to 5th will be a ministerial meeting, and the 7th will be an extraordinary summit of head of state or head of government, African head of state or head of government. For my country, Togo, preserving and strengthening maritime safety and security is a highly important fight that calls for the pooling of efforts and resources in order to combat efficiency and successfully crime at sea and perpetrators. In this regard, the experience in the fight against insecurity underway in the Mediterranean Sea, the Atlantic Ocean, and the Indian Ocean, the Gulf of Guinea, East Africa, and Southern Africa, with the various regional economic committees, should be welcome, encouraged, and strengthened has. The major interest of the Lomé Conference on Maritime Security and Development for Africa lies in the political will of the African head of state to adopt measures to curb this negative and extremely destabilizing phenomenon in order to secure at best shipping in African waters. What you know in the end of our conference in this context is the Lomé summit aims to achieve bold conclusion, including the adoption of legally binding instruments conducive of the eradication of this scourge, namely the African, we like to name the African Charter on Safety and Security in Development. Usually during the African Union Summit, we finish the summit with a declaration, with decisions. Our vision or our focus is this summit, we have to finish it with a binding decision. This decision will be the African Charter of Safety and Security, and Development. We sincerely hope that this charter will be adopted the evening of 7th in Lomé, that the obligation resulting therefrom could be fulfilled, so that African countries can win the battle against maritime insecurity and actively work of the implementation of the 2050 IEM strategy. I like to, before I close my intervention, I like to share with you one of the preoccupations in African continent, particularly in ECOWAS, in West African region. Of course, I think you know, we are discussing right now about a maritime security issue. We have in West African region another issue is a terrorism issue. We have, like you know, Boko Haram. Boko Haram is a terrorism, is a very dangerous group. They kills people in the continent. That the issue is we have two issues. The issue about maritime security, our costs, and another issue that is the terrorism issue is in the continent. That I think during our discussion we can work together or to I don't like. I have a French name, but an English name. we can work together to try to sort out the terrorism and maritime security issue in West Africa. Thank you so much.
Well, Mr. Minister, thank you very much. There's a lot of the leadership of Togo is really essential to this entire process. And I can only applaud you and your government for taking these initiatives. And they're being taken together with the African Union. So let me now ask Ambassador Antonio to say a few words here. Please, Tete.
Thank you, John. A few words, really. Minister, thank you so much for your leadership. And again, congratulate Togo for this very important initiative. Lomé used to be called La Genève d'Afrique, and I think it's still Genève d'Afrique. So we really know that Lomé has a very important history, even in the history of our organization, the African Union. Lomé declarations, Lomé, even our partnership with other parts of the world, Lomé Convention, whatever. So I can go on and on to refer to Lomé and to mean how this country really means still for us the Genève d'Afrique. So it will be definitely a very good moment to be again in Lomé to deal with African seas and oceans. Minister, first, I think it is really a turning point to discuss seas in Africa. Just let's go back to our cultural, how do Africans used to look to the sea before? Well, sea was regarded as taking into account the technological development itself and also the history of the continent. Sea was regarded, if you talk to people, apart from the fishermen who are very courageous to go very far navigating in the sea, they look at the sea as they used to look at the sea as this dangerous place which swallowed so many Africans traveling as slaves abroad. The sea was also regarded like the place which brought very strange people. Very strange people were not like us, and who became friends in some cases, but also took millions of our sisters and brothers. So this is the concept of the sea. I will not justify maybe the lack of interest of the sea, but as a cultural background, this is how people looked at the sea. In my local language, Kalunga, if you say Kalunga, it means even the deaf, but Kalunga is the sea as well. So this cultural barrier with time has been overcome, and we now trying to look at the sea. We are all talking about the blue economy. So a continent which has 26 nautical miles, 26,000, I mean, nautical miles, with 38 countries coastal, 38 African countries are coastal or islands. You talk about Pacific Oceans, you still see Africa. You talk about Atlantic Ocean, you still see Africa. You talk about the Mediterranean Sea, you still see Africa. So it is really something which, yes, we are endowed of natural resources on the ground, but I think it is very important that we now look at turn to the sea. You take countries like, let's take just the Gulf of Guinea. The Gulf of Guinea, as we know, is a very rich region. Still, you find it in Africa. You take countries like the country where I come from. I was born in Angola, but I don't bear this citizenship. I am an African. Well, you have all your natural resources in the. The main natural resources there, like oil. You take a country like Namibia, diamonds are explored on the sea. But still, the conversation on the sea is not a very old thing, even at the African Union. So we try to look at partnership with abroad. I think my good friend, the ambassador of Togo, will remember how hardly we worked with our friends from the other part of the Atlantic Ocean, the zone of peace and cooperation in South Atlantic. Try to look at not only questions of drug trafficking, which is now one of the threats of the sea, but look at the positive things we have on the sea, what Africa can take from the sea in order to develop itself. And I think it is a very good initiative that Togo is promoting this new culture of Africans looking at the sea as also not only as a threat, taking into account the drug trafficking and conflict-related also aspect of the sea, but as a source for our development. So those are the reasons why we thought we could not continue to be at the same time we developed a mine vision, for example, for the mining industry in the African continent. We thought we should have also a maritime strategy. So this strategy definitely was adopted by the 22nd session of the African Union Assembly and Africa's Integrated Maritime Strategy, 2015-2025. And we decided to celebrate 25 July as the Day of Oceans and Seas in Africa. So this is the change of the culture. Now, how do you consolidate this culture? It is only by having events like the one we are organizing in Togo, looking at all the aspects relating to the sea. But at the end of the day, looking at the sea, not only a threat, but a source for our development. I don't think I have to go further. I know we are going to have a very interesting panels, and if we will be participating fully in the panel when time comes. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. So both of our discussants here have sort of put forward this double theme, both facing the negative challenges, the piracy, and the other threats, the pollution, and so on, but also using the oceans for a positive goal of economic and social development. So I'd like to kind of invite, if any of you would like to ask a question of the minister. He's going to be back here later in the day, but he won't be here for the entire discussion. He has other obligations. So I think this would be an opportunity both to any of you would like to ask him or Ambassador Antonio or to make an observation. So I'd like to see if any of you would like to come in here. And so we're going to bring the microphone around, the gentleman there in the third row, fourth row. If you could identify yourself as well, that would be just great.
Christian Büger from Cardiff University. A question to the Minister. There are two major issues in implementing the African Integrated Maritime Strategy. And one, it was already raised, is the general high level of sea blindness among the African continent. So will that actually be addressed during the summit? And the second issue is the relationship between the African Union and the regional economic communities in the implementation of aims. So will this also be an issue on the agenda of the Togo summit?
What is sea blindness?
Well, sea blindness.
Maybe everybody in the room other than myself is totally au courant, but why don't you just explain it?
I'm happy to explain that. That's basically ignorance towards what happens at sea and realizing the potential of the blue economy.
A lack of awareness. Okay. Somebody else like to come in here? Please. And if you could introduce yourself.
Okay. My name is Samir.
Come on, get up.
And I'm with the African Leadership Center. Just speaking to the theme of oceans as a source of development, and then also looking at Agenda 2063, which is on a slightly different timeline, wondering how both the maritime strategy and Agenda 2063 and how they can be better harmonized given this new theme of oceans for development.
Wonderful. I should tell you all, we have 10 African students with us this month from the African Leadership Center and King's College London. And Samia here is one of those. We have a number of other students in the room here. And this is also sort of driving a new agenda with a new generation. Please, would you like to answer his question?
Thank you. I don't know if I have to answer the first question because I think is my question or is a question of the ambassador? I like just to tell you in Africa now we didn't have a binding text about maritime security. We have the IEM strategy 2050. The Togo, the Lomé summit will want to give, when I say us, to give to African countries what we say the charter, the African charter about maritime security. It's a very important summit. That way is an extraordinary summit. The 54 head of state in Africa come in Lomé just to discuss about one theme. The theme is maritime security in Africa. We need right now the charter. We need right now the binding text about the insecurity in African coast. We think during the summit of Lomé, we hope during the summit of Lomé, we will have this text, we will have this charter, because we need this charter for our development. If you see everything in if you see the problem, the issue in Gulf of Guinea, Gulf of Aden, in Somalia coast, we have a serious issue about a serious issue from ocean, because we have piracy in Gulf of Guinea, in Gulf of Somalia. Our vision, the African leaders' vision is they want to protect Africa. Not protect Africa only with against terrorism in continent, protect Africa against piracy in the African coast. I don't know if I answer your question. No. Thank you. Maybe.
No, let me just come back to the question of blindness.
Right. Blindness.
Yeah, blindness or lack of awareness, it depends how we want to put it. No, I think I try to describe the historic development of the mindset of Africans towards the sea. But the current situation is more the exploration of water resources. It requires a lot of technology as well, which is expensive, which you need to acquire. I think this one of the problem which may justify such blindness, which is not total, because as I said, you take the Gulf of Guinea, we are all exploiting oil on the Gulf of Guinea, so we are on the sea as well. But I think we need to go further than that one, the knowledge of the ocean. I do remember in the past, for example, we used to send many students to study oceanography, but today there is a net decline. Even I'm just talking about national experience on how many people young people are we sending to study oceanography to master the sea. How much money we are investing in centers for researchers. I think this is the way to go. We try to do some experience with Latin America. You know, if you take the Zone of Peace and Cooperation of South Atlantic, we have 21 countries on the African side, and unluckily, only 3 countries in the South American side, namely Brazil, Uruguay, and Argentina. And I do remember experience of exchange of centers of research to master the sea. I think this is the way to go in order to combat the so-called blindness on the sea, which is no longer the case, because there are efforts on the continent, not only by defining strategies, but also some countries have developed many centers for research on the sea. What we need to, and I do understand, but without security, certainly, whatever you think about developing your knowledge on the sea will not work. So it is only right that the ministers focused on the maritime security, because security is not only a fight against piracy. We are also, I will use a very undiplomatic word, maybe we are being stolen also as well. Our fisheries, and you find many ships fishing in the African waters, which we don't control. So we are losing a lot of resources as well by the illegal fisheries. And I think those are the concerns as well, apart from the questions of security and piracy. Now, the regs certainly are linked to the maritime security. There was a special session with the regs to the maritime strategy with the regs, because we understand without the regs we cannot. They are the ones who are directly involved with the respective countries. So development of capacities is very important layer. Just take it is only 1.2 owned African ships which travel from Africa to the rest of the continent. The rest of if you see the tankers which go to our continent or the ships which go to our countries are more from the rest of the world and Africans. So capacity is very important in order to combat the so-called blindness. I think with Agenda 2063, certainly taking into account the role of the sea, you cannot think about the Agenda 2063 without having which a very important aspect also raised, without having the integration of this strategy also within the Agenda 2063. I do agree with this insertion. Thank you.
So let's take one more, the gentleman here and the gentleman there. If you could again identify yourself, please, and the third. We'll have 3 questions, okay?
Thank you very much. This is Jamil Ahmad from the United Nations Environment Programme. The Minister and the Ambassador both have referred to opportunities and challenges in maritime security, which is closely linked to development. And the Member States are currently discussing Sustainable Development Goals across the road. The summit in Togo will be just a few weeks after the adoption of the post-2015 development agenda. This will be really a good opportunity to align the position on these issues with the Sustainable Development Goals, which has a goal in oceans, and then there are targets on marine environment and biodiversity and other issues which are closely linked to the topics that will be discussed. So I was just wondering, how would this effort be seen in the context of the broader development agenda that will be adopted in September?
In other words, will the Sustainable Development Goals agenda being adopted in New York City have a direct relationship with, the goals that you have set and that 2063 have set? So please.
Good morning, Your Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Deepak Shetty, and I'm the Director General of Shipping in the Government of India. Without sounding as a dampener for the entire theme of development, I just wanted to raise some concerns from the Indian seafaring perspective. Subsequent to the second half of 2013, there has been a recurring pattern of attacks on tanker vessels in which wholly coincidentally a large number of seafarers happened to be of Indian nationality. They were subject to victimization in terms of abductions, continued detention for large periods of time. And I think what was significantly disquieting was the fact that there were shades of Somali piracy nuances which crept into the Gulf of Guinea patterns. Inasmuch as the detentions started getting prolonged, the releases happened on payment of ransoms, though of course the scale of ransom was nowhere close to what is being sought in a Somali piracy incident. The point that I wanted to highlight is in terms of the law enforcement response of the Gulf of Guinea states, as well as the criminal justice system to bring to book these criminal elements. Just a sense of reassurance from the governments there. I know that this is a matter of concern which is indeed engaging the attention of the states, but reckoning that a large number of these seafarers were Indian nationals, I thought it is imperative that I bring to your kind notice that this is a matter of concern for the Indian government as well, and just wanted to be reassured in terms of the responses, effectiveness of responses, and promptness of responses. Thank you.
Well, those are really important issues. Please.
Good morning to you all. My name is Ismail Jama. I'm from the Office of Attorney General for the Federal Republic of Somalia. Well, I've got a comment to make, and I have a question. After that, basically, piracy. It's something that's been going on for a while, especially in Somalia, and unless drastic actions are put in place to combat all this, soon we're going to have other countries, following Somalia and the Gulf of Guinea. There could be sort of like, terrorist groups. I mean, in the case of Somalia, we're trying to combat Al-Shabaab. to ensure that we stop every avenue of them getting a revenue. Yesterday, I don't know if you guys were here. Some of the sort of honourable gentlemen who were doing the presentation did say something about charcoal, and we're trying to combat that. But soon we're going to end up, those terrorist groups going to coastal areas and creating sort of groups, armed groups, to hijack and sort of do similar things to what happened in Somalia and the Gulf of Guinea. So my question is, as in sort of West African countries, what, long-term visions of actually trying to prevent, for new, outbreak, if I might call that, before it takes place, outbreak of piracy.
So we have two questions on piracy and the question on the Sustainable Development Goals, here. Hang on a sec. You want to try to answer those? And we'll take one last round, and then we'll,
Thank you, Ersh. I think about piracy. If we will have the summit, the Lomé summit, is because we think we have to sort out how to resolve a piracy issue in Africa. As you say, we have a piracy issue in Gulf of Somalia, Adena, in Gulf of Guinea. Right now, we didn't have the binding text against piracy. We have a serious, we know piracy is a very serious issue for our continent. And for example, we have in the Gulf of Adena, we have the support from European Union. In Gulf of Guinea, we have a little bit support of European Union. We want in African Union, we want to decide together. We want to have the binding text against piracy because we think it's not good when only the part of Africa try to resolve the problem. One of the importance of Lomé Summit, it will be the charter, like I told you. After Lomé Summit, we will have the official or the legal instrument against piracy for all African continent. It's not only the east part of Africa, southern part of west part of Africa. The summit will decide or will have the charter against, of course, piracy, illegal fishing, etc. So we said we want to try to convince everybody to discuss with every African countries about the maritime security, because maritime security, of course, is very serious issue for us. If we have the problem, for example, in Gulf of Guinea, we have more piracy in our Gulf than Gulf of Somalia, just because the last time it was the Gulf of Adena. We have a serious problem with European Union support. The pirates change the strategy. They try to work, or they try to come with Gulf of Guinea region. We think is very important for African continent, all African continent, to decide and to take a decision about piracy in all of African continent. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Maybe the ambassador.
SDG, piracy.
No, I think the minister has said it all. We clearly knew when piracy crisis outbreak, with the piracy outbreak in Somalia, coastal Coast of Somalia. I think the crime world is the fastest learning world. We knew that over a part of the African continent will be affected, and it happened in the Gulf of Guinea. I think our colleague, the ambassador of Benin, who is here, who really played a very pivotal role to promote this question, including with the Security Council in New York. We'll have something to add to what we are saying today. But certainly, I think the good thing is to end with parcel the way we are acting now with by having the Lomé meeting to have all Africa to decide on a kind of binding instrument will be a new development, because until now we have been taking into account also the difference between what happened in Somalia and what happens in the Gulf of Guinea. There are quite some difference. So the concept had to evolve to bridge the two differences as well, in terms of actors, in terms of the way they act, in terms of problems. But at the end of the day, crime is a crime. So it is only good that we all come together.
Big theme is that we're all interconnected, and not just the two sides of Africa. We're all in these situations together, if it's piracy or terrorism, capturing human beings for ransom, and so on. I'd like to welcome Ambassador Zinzu, the permanent representative of Benin, who has joined us here. So I think the lady here and the gentleman in the back. So let's take the gentleman, either way. Go ahead, give it to the lady up front here, and then the gentleman in the back. Do you want to say anything? And then Ambassador Zinzu. Then we're going to have to wrap it up.
Okay. Good morning. I'm Roma Stibravi from NGO Sustainability. Obviously, we work on the development aspects, particularly renewable energy and solar, but we now are planning a program as a side event in the UN in the fall on what we call coastline restoration, which every maritime country faces, and perhaps speaking with the minister, he would like us to do a little preview of this program at his conference, because coastline restoration not only helps in that, but it is a big employment opportunity and training opportunity. And the technology has been used in many places. Actually, it started in Greece, and it's a question of whether we can be helpful at the conference.
Gentleman in the back there, and there he is.
Good morning. My name is Douglas Stevenson. I'm from the Siemens Church Institute here in New York City. And as we know, the prosperity of Africa, like the prosperity of the rest of the world, depends on merchant shipping. And we have to do everything we can to protect against any disruptions to the streams of commerce by sea. That's what we call maritime security. Now, the biggest threat to maritime security is recruiting and retaining a sufficient number of seafarers to operate the vessels that are needed for the anticipated growth in shipping. Certainly, piracy has a factor in that it deters people from that career. But one of the important things that I see relating to Africa is we don't see very many African seafarers. And the reason for this is there are very few schools that train African seafarers to operate and man the vessels of flags around the world. So my question is maritime training on the agenda of your meeting, or will it be? And I think it should be. Thank you.
Ambassador, can somebody give him the microphone?
I would like to thank IPI and the government of Togo and African Union for organizing this meeting, and particularly the government of Togo for taking the leadership in organizing the summit on maritime security. It's an overall comprehensive approach to the problem. We had, as Benin, to kickstart this process of addressing piracy in the Gulf of Guinea in 2011. And I will say at that time it was it became an issue because we had an upsurge of piracy attacks in the against the port of Cotonou, and the president of Benin came to New York to address the issue with the members of the Security Council. And from there, we have had 2 resolutions of the Security Council addressing the issue. And in implementation of that, those 2 resolutions, we have put in place in West Africa and Central Africa, which are combined to be now part of the Gulf of Guinea initiative. We have a full mechanism, regional mechanism in place. We should not ignore that. Our governments were not really working actively on the issue, but when it became an issue in West Africa, when piracy became an issue, our government took decisive measures to address that. So I will, reacting on sea blindness, I will say no, sea blindness is too much said about Africa. Africa has clear contact, clear attachment to issue. I come myself from a fisherman tribe, and I know how much sea meant for our people. And I would say we are making great strides in the region to address the issue. And our governments are equipping themselves. My government, for instance, being a least developed country, has been able to invest to acquire warships, patrol ships, to be able to control its maritime regime. We have established 2 radar stations to control the situation, and I will tell you the number of piracy attacks has decreased drastically in the region, taking into account the policy that the governments of the region has put in place. And we have the mechanism, the center, regional center, which is established in Cameroon, and I think that today we can consider the initiative of Togo as something that will take us to a further steps to implement the African strategy for in the security, maritime security. And I think that we have to all work together to bring the initiative to that stage. So that's what I wanted to add to what is being said. Our governments are very mobilized on the issue and are acting to provide maritime security. And we need more support from our development partners to achieve that. That's what I would like to say here. Thank you very much. And encourage the government of Togo to move this initiative ahead. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. So we've gone from blindness to vision, if I may use the visual metaphor here. So things have really moved along over the last couple of years. Mr. Minister, you want to say a few words to finish? Okay. One more person wanted to, come on, yeah. Just introduce yourself also.
Yes, my name is Sam. I am the DPR, Deputy Permanent Representative of the Gambia, West Africa.
Okay.
We are a small nation, 1.58 million people, so our voice may not be heard, but I want to talk about a little thing, and that is security. And I believe in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, they say humans, the first thing after being fed is security. And I think the security we lack in Africa is primarily because we have too much arms flowing into the continent. Not a single African country manufactures weapons, but we have more weapons in Africa than in any part of the world being given to bad people. And it flows through this ocean. Like he said, years ago when they look at the sea and they were afraid of the boats that came with strange people. Now people are afraid of the boats that come with all these weapons. And unless we also focus on that, looking at how to curb the tons of weapons being manufactured because of profit and being dumped into the continent, I don't think we're going to go too far in really curbing this problem that we are facing. I just had to make that comment. It was from my heart.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, you know, the UN adopted the Arms Trade Treaty last year. I mean, these are implementation challenges, just as the challenges of coming to a protocol and then implementing it in the long term. So would you like to say anything else at this point, Mr. Minister?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'd like to answer about a shipping issue in Africa. Like I told you, if we will have the extraordinary African Union Summit in Lomé, that's because the African leaders want to take a very strong decision about piracy in the Africa. Of course, I think we need the maritime training. We have in African Union, what, like, you know, the strategy, the 2050 strategy, is a very serious and very big strategy about a lot of things like maritime training agenda. The ambassador says this month we will celebrate the July 25th African Sea and Ocean Day. This decision and all of the decision is contribute to give us, or to give African leaders the possibility to continue to work together and to work against piracy in all African coast. About energy solar, I think is very good initiative. Maybe we can discuss together, or we can. We are available to receive you in Africa. I like to tell you the first door in Africa is Lomé, is not Cotonou. It's Lomé, yeah. If you want to come in Africa, come in Lomé before, just for and we can discuss about this initiative. It's a very good initiative. I think we are available to discuss with you. It's okay for me. Maybe the ambassador want to complete.
No, I think there was a Minister. Thank you so much. There was a question of training of people. I made a reference to capacity. Actually, the same strategy has a chapter on capacity development. It takes actually all the aspects of security and capacity development. So this is where the training comes in. As I said, unless you master the sea, so you cannot think of even developing any strategy, be it for development or for security. But I should still underline also, but let's have the sea safe, but let's look at it as a source for development for the African continent as well. Now, there is a strategic task force created for the strategy, the African strategy on maritime, the African maritime strategy. This task force has been visiting stakeholders. I know they visit some facilities, and they are actually establishing partnerships in order to create force capacity, which the African continent is lacking. But yes, let's make the sea safe, but let's bear in mind that it is also a source for our development. Mediterranean sea is also a source of joy. As we know, it's only a source of sad events. Thank you.
So, Minister Ducey, Ambassador Antonio, Minister Zinzu, and all of you who asked questions just now or made some important observations here, I really want to thank you very much. And the fact that everybody has stayed seated and nobody has run for the exit, which sometimes happens here on other events, shows that that people are taking this seriously, which is great. And I really wish you personally and your government and the AU a great success for the meeting in Lomé and the work that lies ahead. So we're going to take a 15-minute break. Let's give them a big round of applause.